Morris Robinson and his dear brother Ira Robinson, and Sandy, his wife, and his son Yosef, and Sarah Libby and Shaul. We have a surprise musical interlude by Sarah Libby Robinson Epstein and my sister Hannah Heller. And Acharon Tadiv, the last for the best, the Chassan and Kala. Rudy Robinson and Sam Deitch will give us freedom. So we know you're all eating, but we're committed to getting you out by 9, even after Baruch, so please allow us the indulgence of starting our dinner program now. And enjoy your meal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to talk about the third of the Sheva Brachot. I would like to provide a possible explanation. The Sheva Brachot, as you may know, are ancient. Even in the time of the Talmud, a couple thousand years ago, there were questions as to what these Sheva Brachot meant. Let me just read it to you briefly, and then we'll have a brief discussion on it. The third Sheva Brachot says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher yasa et ha'adam b'tzalmo. Blessed art thou, O Lord, who created or who formed man in his image. Then it says, B'tzelem d'mut tavnito, the image of a tavnit. And that creates a problem. The problem is that a tavnit is an exact form. In the book of Malachim, a tavnit is treated as a builder's model, so that you can build something. If you want to build an arch in the air, first you build a model on the ground because you know what you're doing. But it says in the Pasha Taam that we read last week that Hashem does not have any tavnit. Uses the same words. And yet it says, Asher Yasad Hazam B'Tzalmo B'Tzelem D'mut Tavnito. Also, the Yigdal says, Ein Lo Kachibah Hashem, Ein Lo D'mut HaGuf, Ein No Guf. So what does it mean that God created man with Salmo? The answer, I think, can be found in the obligations that the Chassan takes upon himself when he chooses to marry. Chazal in Masechet Sotah say, what is the meaning of the verse, V'halachta b'drachav, and you will follow in his ways? Is it possible for a human being to follow in the ways of the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Well, surely it is said that Hashem is a devouring fire. Rather, says the Gemara, it means that you follow after the attributes of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And what are these attributes? Just as he clothes the naked, so shall you clothe the naked. Just as he visits the sick, so must you visit the sick. Just as he comforts mourners, so must you comfort mourners. Just as he buries the dead, so must you bury the dead. Through marriage, the husband takes upon himself the obligations to clothe his wife, to feed his wife, and to marry his wife. And the obligations that we're talking about here are obligations which the husband takes upon himself. There are some obligations that the husband does not take upon himself, such as visiting his wife if he is sick, accompanying her if she is a mourner. And so here, what is happening is that the chassid is expected not only to follow the Torah, but to also use some common sense, to act like a mensch. One of my teachers, Rav Amital of Yeshiva Haretz Yom, once said that the Torah is the minimum of what is required, that people should use their own judgment to fill in the balance. So, by following these words, the chassan manages to achieve the mutav nito. But then it talks about the kala. And was taken from him binyan adayad. What is a binyan adayad? Again, the Gemara is unclear, but I think if we look at the words adayad, it means without limitation of time or space. In the biblical imagination, there aren't 4 dimensions, there are only 2. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Thy dominion is the dominion of all possible worlds, and that kingship is from generation to generation, time and space. So the woman is somehow beyond time, somehow beyond space. And what does it mean, binyan adayad? I think that for that, if we simply take a look at the words of the Shemona Esrei, it talks about binyan olam. Let me just find it for you. It talks about Jerusalem. Jerusalem, you shall return to Jerusalem and you shall live there. Basically, Jerusalem is considered as a metaphysical entity. It is considered part of Yemot HaMashiach. There's a messianic quality to this. And I would suggest to you that what is happening here in this particular bracha is that there is a distinction is made between the character of men and the character of women. The character of men is to be rooted in the here and now. The mitzvot of the man are the mitzvot shehazman grama. Mitzvot that are time-bound. The character of the woman is completely different. It is unlimited in time, unlimited in space. Let me perhaps give you an example of the difference between men and women in this regard. True story. It happened about 100 years ago. A man, like thousands of people before him and after him, a Jewish man, came from Eastern Europe to New York City. And once he established himself as a pants presser, he sent for his wife and his children. And when his children came, the wife insisted the first week that she bring them all to an appropriate school. And everyone was able to go to an appropriate school except for the oldest. When she came to bring the oldest to yeshiva, they said, there is no room for him here. And she said, but he has to go to yeshiva. And so they took her into the classroom. And there were 2 children sitting at each table, at each at each little table where one that was designed for one. They said there is no room here. And so that night, she went home to her to that cold water flat on the Lower East Side, and she and her husband were talking. And they had a discussion. And she said, we have to go back. We have to try again. And the husband said, but didn't the Rebbeim show you that there was no place for our son? He has to go and get his education someplace else. And the discussion raged on into the night, respectfully, but the way a husband and a wife who care about each other discuss things. And the husband said, if you go back to the school, what would you say and what would you do? The school says there is no place for this child. They showed it to you. She said, I have to try. She went back to the school the next day. And she dressed herself and her son in their Shabbos best. She brushed him up and they sat down on the stairway leading up to the door. And they stayed there through the morning. They stayed there past noon. In the middle of the afternoon, the rabbi came to the door and said, Madam, what are you doing here? And she said, we need to go to the school. But madam, didn't you see that there is no place for your son here? Yes. Didn't you hear us tell you that there would not be a place for your son or for someone like your son for several years? Yes. So then what are you doing here? And she replied simply, we are waiting. The result was that they made a place for the son at the corner of the teacher's desk. And later on, that woman was honored by the yeshiva. What is happening in this story, which I've embellished, but only a little bit, because I didn't know all of the details, and the details I didn't know I made up. Well, could be in a past present, that I don't know. But the fact that she sat at the school, waiting, that is true. And she was honored by the school. What is happening is that the husband and the wife were both deeply conscious of the need to maintain the transmission of the Masoret from themselves to their children. They were deeply concerned that if they did not give their children an appropriate education, they would lose their children to Yiddishkeit. But the husband looked to the here and to the now. And he said, if there's no place, there's no place. What would you say and what would you do? But the wife looked at the same situation through the prism of eternity. And she said, I have to try again. This difference between husband and wife is what is at the heart of Jewish marriage. The Torah says, the Torah first talks about the creation of man, and then says, Lo tov ha'adam l'hiyot lavado. It is not sufficient for man to be alone. he needs an Ezer Kenegdo. And Chazal have always focused on the dialectical tension of someone who is an Ezer, who is Kenegdo. Now it's very interesting that when the children of Adam filled the world with violence, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, Lo Tov, this is not good. And he started over again with Noah. But here, with the creation of Adam Harishon, the Lo Tov was immediate, because man is not capable by himself of fulfilling God's wishes. The here and the now is where man is concerned. The future, time and eternity is the woman's place. Chazal conflate this and say simply, Lo ish below isha, below isha below ish, below shnehem below shechina. That a man is not able to live effectively, working in the here and now, making sure that the bills are paid, and that the proper arrangements are made below Isha, without a woman who sees time and eternity, and who lives through the prism of time and eternity. Similarly, a woman cannot work effectively at the level of time and eternity without someone who can bring her back to earth. To put it another way, the future gives meaning to the present, and the present makes the future possible. Without the future, this is simply a meal. But it's part of, that when the future is taken into account, it becomes a marvelous experience. And so I want to thank you all for being here. And like I said, there was no sure meaning of any of the Sheva Brachos, but this is one interpretation that I think is worthy of consideration. At this point, I'd like to introduce...
For some fun, Yehudi Kayla with her curls and her beautiful smile, her great personality and style. Yehudi Kayla with her curls and her beautiful smile, her great personality and style.
Thank you everybody for coming, and it's really nice to have just so many opportunities to celebrate our happiness with all of our family and friends. And I think it was interesting to hear Morris talk about some of the differences between men and women, and what they are what their focus is, because I think when people give us gifts and do things for us, I'm sort of the one that's focusing more on enjoying the gifts, and he was focusing is better at thanking other people for the gifts. So that they'll feel better in the future. So I'll let you do the rest of the thank you.
Okay, thank you for allowing us to speak after all these other excellent speakers. It's very, when I had the Shabbat Kala, well, the Shabbat, the Ufruf Shabbat, right, which happened to be right before Tisha B'Av, and then the Shabbat Kala and the Kala Tish, I really spoke at several occasions about my feelings about the passage of time and how it's very hard to make sense of sequencing and when things happen in our lives. And now that we've gotten married, I really spent a lot of time today asking Sam, like, did it really happen? Did we really get married yesterday? And I was going on Facebook and looking at pictures that people posted of us and tagged us in and wrote comments about. I said, well, I guess we must have really gotten married. then we were driving, we were getting out of the car and we're about to walk in. I said, Sam, are we really about to go to our own Sheva Brachot? And then I walked in, I see all these people who are here just to honor us and celebrate us and welcome us into the community. I started asking my siblings, am I hallucinating or am I really here for the holiday? And they said, well, are you wearing a hat? And I said, yes, I'm wearing a hat. And they said, well, do you have 2 rings? I said, yes, there are 2 rings. They said, does Sam have a ring? I said, yes, Sam has a ring. I said, okay, so it's real. So I really have to say that I did mention this at several occasions already. For those of you who heard it once, I apologize, but I really do feel it. There are people who get married at a very young age. Some people get married older. And so for those who have to wait to find somebody very special, I really do have to say that there is this experience of surreality, and it's much deeper and more elaborate because there was this sense of having to wait so long for somebody who was so special. So I really want to thank you all for welcoming us into the community as a couple, and the Dyke family, most of all, for welcoming me into their family, and of course Sam for sharing her life with me so we can build a home together. And we're very, very happy to celebrate with all of you, so thank you.